A very good morning to one and all. Dear viewers, we were studying our parliamentary privileges under the Constitution of India. Far we had studied what is a contempt and what are the various parliamentary privileges provided to the members of the parliament, the members of the various parliamentary committees, as well as the Attorney General of India and the ministers. Okay, and we had also studied that these are individual as well as collective rights. Okay, now we will. Yes, we also listen to what Sir Erickson May said, as well as what is contempt, what are the constitutional provisions under Article 105 and Article 194. We had completed Article 105 and also we had completed Article 88, which is also important in this regard, which talks about the Attorney General of India. And now we will continue about Article 194. Okay, so Article 194 specifically provides in its marginal heading the powers, privileges, etc. of the houses of the legislature and of the members and committees thereof. Okay, so it talks basically about the various powers, privileges of the houses of the state legislatures as well as the various members of legislative assembly or the members of state assembly as well, if there are any, as well as it talks about the various members of the state legislatures committees. Clear? So we must know that these members of state legislatures do have the right to speak in the state legislatures. They have the right to participate as well. So beforehand they will have the right to participate, and then and only then the right to speech will also be there. Similarly, the liability of the members of the state legislatures are not there before any kind of court. Okay, so they are not liable to whatever is said by them or whatever vote are given by them before the legislature of that state and before any committee as well. If any vote is given or any proceedings are undertaken by them as a member of that committee, they will not be liable and answerable to the court. Clear? And similarly, if any publication is made by obtaining proper authorization by the state legislatures. Okay, also we must know that these powers, privileges with respect to the houses of the state legislatures as well as the members as well as the committees of such state legislatures will be such which will be defined by the state legislatures from time to time. Okay, and until and unless they are defined by the state legislature, they will be same as were before the commencement of the section 26 of 44th Constitutional Amendment Act. Clear? Also we must know that these rights and privileges with regard to speak in or with regard to participate in the proceedings of the state legislature are also provided to certain other people as well, such as the Advocate General as well as the ministers. Clear? So we'll study this as well. So first of all, let us try to interpret Article 194 completely. So exhaustively we will try to understand what all provisions are provided and how to interpret it accordingly. Okay, so by reading the first clause of Article 194, we must understand. So we will start reading from after the comma. There shall be freedom of speech in legislature of every state. Okay, so freedom of speech is provided in the state legislature. Okay, or we must also know that this is different from that of the fundamental freedom provided under Article 19 clause 1 subclause A. Okay, so it's a special right provided, and it is having a ulterior consideration. Okay, so it is provided with a particular object, and that object is with regard to the policies and the various laws of our country, especially with regard to the states, so that these issues may be discussed appropriately in the state legislatures. So that is why the freedom of speech is provided, so that the member of the state legislative assembly or member of the state legislative council can, without any kind of fear, speak anything whatever their heart and their mind directs them to do so. Okay, so until and unless the proper representation is made with regard to the various citizens, the democratic ideals as are present in the standard form will not be there in practice. So that is why the freedom of speech is provided in the state legislature as well. So subject to the provisions of this constitution. So this freedom of speech in the legislature of every state is subject to the provisions of this constitution. Okay, so it has to work within the four corners of our constitution. So subject to the provisions of this constitution and to the rules and standing orders. Therefore, the freedom of speech in the legislature of the state is subject to the provisions of the constitution as well as to the rules and standing orders regulating the procedure of the legislature. Okay, so it has to pass first of all these impediments, and thereafter this right is provided. So subjugation of the freedom of speech is there to these two authorities. Next clause. No member of the legislature of a state shall be liable to any proceedings in any court in respect of anything said. Okay, so the liability of the members of the state legislature with regard to anything which is said or any vote given by him in the legislature or any committee thereof, and no person shall be so liable in respect of publication by or under the authority of house of such legislature of any report, paper, votes or proceedings. So clause 2 is the constituent of two main parts. First part contains the thing is the members shall not be liable with respect to anything which is said by them in the state legislature, also with regard to the voting done by them in the state legislature or in any committee of the state legislature. So first part is no liability of the members of the state legislature. Clear? So there will be no proceedings, no kind of proceedings before any court. Okay, with regard to whatever is said by them, stated by them, or with regard to the voting done by them before the state legislature or in any committee of the state legislature. The second part of this particular clause provides that there will be no liability in case the proper authority is taken. Okay, so proper authorization is required before the publishing of any report, paper, votes, or proceedings. Okay, so the positive interpretation from this is that there will be no liability of such persons who have published any report with the proper authorization of the houses of the state legislature. So, what we can draw from this is the inference, the negative thing, that is, in case if something is published, if some report is published without the proper authorization of the state legislature, then there will be the liability and the house will punish appropriately according to its own procedure, according to its rules. So I think the second clause is very clear to you people now. Moving on to the next clause. In other respects, the powers, privileges, and immunities of a house of legislature of a state and of the members and the committees of a house of such legislature shall be such as may from time to time be defined by the legislature by law. Okay, so in other aspects, the power, privileges, and immunities of the members, okay, and of the houses of such state legislature as well as of the committee shall be such as is defined from time to time by the state legislature. Okay, and that will be done by the creation of a law by state legislature. So state legislature will first of all have to frame a law on this particular subject, and thereafter the rights, privileges, and immunities will be accordingly whatever is provided by the state legislature. So these are the provisions, and until so defined shall be those of that house and of its members and committees immediately before the coming into force of section 26 of the Constitution 44th Amendment Act 1978. Clear? So until it is provided by the creation of a law, it will be exactly the same as was before the commencement of 44th Amendment Act. Clear? So the net effect is the position remains the same. Okay? Whatever is the rights, whatever powers, privileges, and immunities are that of British Parliament, the same exist with the state legislatures, houses, as well as its members and members of the committees of state legislatures. Clear? And finally, the last clause, the provisions of clause 1, clause 2, and clause 3 shall apply in relation to the persons who, by virtue of this constitution, have the right to speak in and otherwise to take part in the proceedings of a house of legislature of a state or any committee thereof, as they apply in relation to the members of the legislature. So this particular last clause is pointing out towards such people who have the right to speak in and take part in the proceedings of houses of the state legislatures. And who are they? Yes, they are the Advocate General as well as the ministers. Okay, so Article 177 is connected with this particular provision, and let us also read Article 177. The marginal heading provides rights of ministers and Advocate General as respects the houses. Every minister and the Advocate General for a state shall have the right to speak in and otherwise to take part in the proceedings of the legislative assembly of the state, or in the case of a house having a legislative council, both the houses, and to speak in and otherwise to take part in the proceedings of any committee of the legislature of which he may be named a member, but shall not by virtue of this article be entitled to vote. So the right to speak and right to participate in the proceedings of state legislature is not only provided to the members of the state legislatures, but also to the houses themselves, as well as to the members of the committee of the state legislatures, as well as finally the right is provided to the every minister of that particular state, as well as to the Advocate General of that particular state. And the concept behind this is, since he is the first law officer of that particular state, he may point out to any important legal issue. Also, he might have something important to add on to that discussion. Therefore, he is having the right to speak as well as to participate. Clear? So, his legal outlook will also be taken into consideration accordingly if required. So, therefore, he is provided with this particular right. Similarly, you must also know that this right to speak as well as right to participate in the proceedings of the houses of the state legislature is provided to the ministers of that particular state. The reason being is, the ministers might not be the sitting members of the state legislative assembly or the state legislative council, and they may have sufficient time to be appointed or to be elected accordingly. Okay, so therefore the mention of these two categories of persons are important. Clear? Now, having completed Article 194 and its connected provision which we studied just now, moving on to the next part, let us analyze the members' individual privileges. Okay, so the parliamentary privileges are being discussed, and now the dimension upon which we are scanning is the individual privileges. Okay, the members individually have the freedom of speech in the parliament. First of all, as you can rightly see in this pyramidal structure. Okay, so the freedom of speech in the parliament is available to the members individually, and it is a very important and a paramount kind of right. Next is freedom from arrest. Okay, with regard to the civil matters, the members of the parliament as well as the members of the state legislature are having the freedom from arrest. Okay, so we all know why this particular freedom from arrest is provided to the members of state legislative assembly or the state legislative council or to the members of the parliament. The reason being is they are holding very crucial and important post, and they might be there might be allegations against them, and the reasons might be the political or any other attached reason. So you must know that they are having the freedom from arrest. Okay, so the logic behind it is understood. Next is they are also having the freedom from appearing as a witness. Okay, so I think the various individual privileges of the members of the parliament as well as the members of state legislature are clear to you people. Thank you, dear viewers, for being here. Have a great day ahead.